Hello, everyone, and welcome to summary of Act 1 of The Legacy of Thorne, or at the current moment that it is in our Discord server, The Legacy of Dovahkiin's Harem. There's context, I swear. It's an inside joke. But anyways, we would have actually recorded all of this from the beginning, but we didn't come up with the idea or thought to do so until about 2 sessions ago. And in our last session, we actually concluded Act 1. So, because of that, I'm just going to go into a bit of a brief summary and what's to come up in, this episode, which actually, I'll just say now, this episode doesn't even go into Act 2 yet. This is going to be our Halloween one-shot. So, to start us off, the story begins in a caravan in the land of Greenwater. Is headed towards the town known as Brendale. Aboard this caravan are some recruits headed to enroll in a vampire hunting academy that is run by a man named Holden. Of course, before they are able to begin this academy and teaching, they must first pick up some recruits from Brendale, or at least this is what everyone is told. Aboard this caravan, we have a furbolg cleric who is named Fearin, nervously shuffling about until he gets the attention of another human fighter that is aboard, his name being Malark, and another passenger being a drow named Oland. The three of them talk for a good while before suddenly the caravan's wheels start breaking. Everyone dismounts and we walk around a little bit outside, waiting for the repairs to be done. There, they end up meeting a famous elf named Grimmel Bluesly, who is there to help protect this caravan. And to go into a little bit of context, this D&D universe, or this D&D campaign, actually takes place about a few hundred years after a previous campaign that we ran. That was called the Dark Blood campaign, or the Curse of the Dark Blood, whatever you want to call it. And this is actually one of the few returning characters from a party known as the Knights of Light, which we'll go into a little bit more as we get into this summary. But we'll get back to the point. Fearin and Malark, they go into nearby woods to look for food, while Grimmel stays back to protect the caravan and make sure repairs go smoothly. So, Fearin and Malark, they end up finding a good mix of berries and such. And Fearin here, being a furbolg and a cleric of nature, they are from these woods, and they're easily able to point out poisonous berries. Oland, being a drow, does not care, and he just starts eating them anyway. And that's just so the others won't get any sickness or anything, because he can just take it. Oland, of course, talks about drow culture for a little while, and how they enjoy poisoning their own food and eating it. Then we have Malark and Fearin, who decide to go hunting, and they end up encountering a very hungry, oversized caterpillar, which they kill, of course, by making it throw up its guts all over Malark. And then of course that hungry party members, they eat up the caterpillar and decide to do some relaxing for a while. At this point, we get into session 0.5, which is where the rest of the members of this session come in, including myself. So 3 more people finally climb off of this caravan to come talk and help assist the others. First who comes off is a black dragonborn bard, and that's more of a dark purple, but is technically a black dragonborn. And his name is Tatari Figma. Next up is a rogue wearing a bunny mask, who goes by the White Rabbit. Yeah, I had to remember that a little bit. The White Rabbit, I believe, with their real name, of course, being Alice Tavereau. And then, last but not least, and the character that I play as in this campaign, a man in a dark-themed cat outfit, totally not ripping off Batman in any way, shape, or form, Dovahkiin Bluespire, aka Catman, aka, as you could tell in the last name, related to Grimmel Bluespire. More specifically, one of the children of Grimmels. They all, of course, chat a little bit, and before eventually just deciding to climb back onto the caravan. However, Dovahkiin decides to stay very close to Grimmel for some reason. For the others didn't know at the time because they were related and close. The others only knew him as Catman, and he ends up riding near the front with Grimmel. Tatari does what bards do best, and he just starts making jabs at other players and jokes, mainly towards Alice for being a little rabbit. And Oland eventually soon joins in on the fun and helps out Tatari with doing this. Of course, due to that, the two bond quite tightly, and Alice ends up almost having a fateful encounter by holding his blade to the throat of said drow, who is known as a masterclass assassin. However, lucky for Alice, he's feeling generous and nice today. Also due to the fact that he also had a poison dagger stabbed right back at her towards her chest. And he suggested that she should disengage before it cuts her. And of course, she is smart enough to know that that's bad, so she stands down. Of course, the party then also just continues on with some of their idle conversation until the caravan suddenly gets stopped again. But this time, by horse-riding bandits. Tatari had the idea to try talking this through diplomatically, to try to convince them, hey, let's not do this. You are outnumbered. Maybe we can come to some sort of agreement. But Alice doesn't see a point in this, and she just immediately goes out swinging, slicing the nearest one's throat, causing him to bleed out and die, initiating our first ever combat. And so, they start battling the bandits. Bandits call out for more reinforcements, and we have to deal with 4 more arthropods that get added on into the fight. Dovahkiin and his sword that he wields, from the sword that he wields, which belonged to another member of the Knights of Light, known to everyone else as the Unnamed Hero, but is but Dovahkiin does know his real name as Awari Sureya, aka the character I played in my last campaign. But that's besides the point. From this sword, the sword is traumatized from having a very bad experience from these things. You may be wondering, 1, why does this sword have memories? And 2, how the fuck is a sword traumatized? Well, I'm glad you asked, because in the last campaign, we had to deal with one of these. And you wanna know what happened turn 1? I got fucking paralyzed and almost died. I failed 2 death saves from these motherfuckers. So yeah, that's why the sword's traumatized from arthropedes. But that's besides the point. Dovahkiin fucking annihilates these motherfuckers. He learned from the mistakes of Awari. He throws out monk punches and staff attacks left and right, getting nat 20s after nat 20s. I kid you not, I think I got maybe 3 or 4 nat 20s in that single encounter. But that's besides the point. Alice, then of course, sneak attacks, does some good sneak attacking as a rogue. Malark bashes in a lot of their skulls, and Tatari does monk things and buffs the party while singing music simultaneously. Viren fires out some guiding bolts that only manage to hit the other party members, and it ends up hitting Tatari and downing Dovahkiin. And then, just like out of a story tale, a mysterious hooded girl comes to help and whips her own fucking attack, ruining the entire moment. Nevertheless, we do end up succeeding, and we defeated our first ever encounter. And then we found out that all of those bandits were bitten by vampires, but that doesn't matter, because we just right up back in the caravan, and we continue on with our journey, not worrying about the fact that they were bitten by vampires, okay? That's not important right now. Anyways, meanwhile, while this was all happening, we have our silly and naive little witch, which is named Yuna, who is trying to discover the world for the first time ever after being cooped up in a house for her entire life, waiting for her parents to come home. And on her first day of coming back out, entering the world for the first time ever, she encounters a cult of necromancers who serve a guy named Jeff that jumped off of a bridge, and she ends up kidnapping one of their members, which is a skeleton who she carries around on her back like an actual backpack. And her patron is this very sweet and kind man named Whispers, and he brings back Jeff back to life and converts him to his, religion or worship, along with Yuna's help of persuasion as well. So, Yuna and her new skeleton backpack friend eventually makes it to the village of Brindale before the rest of the party, showing off her magic to the people in the town. Yuna unknowingly ends up killing a woman with her Eldritch Blast out in the distance. But don't worry, she eventually catches up and ends up reviving her and indoctrinates her own child, Max, into this cult or worship. And she also held out her hand to Max's sister, who refused, wanting to stay with her mother after being traumatized that their mother just got killed. And their fucking mother becomes this weird fucking monster and eats Max's sister. Anyways, we end up finding this old woman that signs a contract with Whisper, who asks him to have youth. And then they also manage to sign a contract with a guard who has a wife who's leaving him, and he signs a contract with Whisper so he can get himself a love potion to try to save their marriage. And finally, Max and the skeleton bony guy backpack thing decide to set off on some adventures of their own, and they go off in the sunset, creating their own journey. Yuna is sad, of course, as this was her first ever friends, and she decides to go and visit the library in search of knowledge. And here is where she happens to run into Cliff Bluespire. Yes, another Bluespire, another child of Grimmel, and he invites her to come and meet the rest of his family, who's arriving into town by caravan, actually just tomorrow. And that's technically where we leave off with the, I guess, quote-unquote, session 0. To go into a little bit of context, Cliff is a full-blood tiefling. I don't think I mentioned it for Dovahkiin's yet either, or Grimmel, I guess, technically. Grimmel is a full-blood elf. Dovahkiin is half elf, half tiefling. They are aquatic elves. And yeah, Cliff is a full-blood tiefling. Their mother, Runaria, she was a full-blood tiefling as well. But that's besides the point. Now we get into a little bit of session 1, and I'll kind of probably start paraphrasing and speeding this up a little bit, as this is kind of where our notes of the exact things of what happens in each session kind of ends. So the rest of this will be mostly coming from my memory. So I may miss a few things here and there, or I may forebode some things that might have happened. My bad if I do that. It's just, like I said, this is just mostly a rough summary. But anyways, the caravan finally ends up rolling into the town of Brindale, fresh in a new day. And all the party ends up meeting up with Dovahkiin's brother, Cliff, as well as Yuna. Yuna, immediately after meeting them, uses Detect Thoughts on both Oland and Tatari. And ironically enough, finds out that the drow assassin, Oland, is a very bad man. And he is looking for some woman named Luna Benray. And he also wants to kill Alice. Grimmel and Cliff go off to talk about stuff in private, while Oland and Tatari also go off and do the same. Yuna makes an excuse for Alice to go get her some water, and being as Dovahkiin is Cliff's brother, she goes to him, spills about what she had learned about Oland to Dovahkiin. And Dovahkiin, of course, wanting to make a good first impression and protect Yuna for the sake of his brother, he lends her an ear and basically just helps her to stay safe and help make sure that Oland doesn't know, while also dealing with Oland, yada yada. Tatari ends up learning that one of his late's enemies is in Glotafel, or the land of steel and steam. He passes this on to an informant that serves for the Thorne family, and he passes them a letter from his lady, who is known as Evelyn Rimbane. After doing all this and dealing with the stuff that he needed to deal with, Tatari rejoins up with the party. And ironically enough, that's right as when Dremel and Cliff as well return. And they ask Dovahkiin if he can trust the rest of the party. And of course, with this answer, he tells them that stopping here for more people is also a little bit of more of a side objective, because this is where we get a insight that there is serial killings going on in this town. So they also want to deal with these. Mostly because they believe that it's because of a vampire that's been running amok around the town, killing women in the dead of the night. They head towards an inn to talk more in detail about it privately, but Yuna breaks away from the party briefly to try to keep tabs on the drow Oland. And she ends up catching him talking to another shadowy looking drow about finding Luna and heading towards the capital of Greenwater, called Greenwaris. Yes, very original, I know. Meanwhile, the rest of the party in the inn learns about the crimes that are befalling this city. A serial killer who is drinking the blood of specifically young women at night. Tatari reads his message and that he had gotten from his informant, and finds out that his lady had given him a very similar mission to kill the vampire here, which they are able to figure out the name of, which is a Balker man named William. Here's where the notes kind of come to an end, so I'm just gonna go into just what I remember from this point on. So, the rest of the party, after being informed of this, they of course go out finding what they can. They go into different groups. Dovahkiin and Tatari end up finding a bunch of, I guess, lackeys to William, while the rest of the people end up finding William himself. And this enters a two-way type of party, like battle combat thing going on. Tatari and Dovahkiin deal with the combat, the little lackeys, very easily, very well. And Dovahkiin also calls in some guards, as he is actually a guard himself. He is specifically a traveling guard for his hometown, known as the Blue Isles. He works for the Blue Isles as a guard, but he's recently been traveling around various places, providing help where possible, assistance to other guards and militaries. Kind of doing Batman-like things, I guess, is the best way to describe it. And he calls in some guards, gets the ones who are still alive, he gets them detained, and are able to get a little bit of info from them. And meanwhile, the rest of the party deals with William pretty well. Yuna asks, why does he do what he does? And he's like, well, I need to get blood, and the blood from women tastes better. And he's just like, well, why don't you just do it for me? Like, why didn't you just kidnap me? That's not fair. And I kid you not, William is just like, hold on, I think we have the exact quote of what happened here. I will mention the exact quote. You should have just kidnapped me while you had the chance. It's what Yuna said. William replied with, did you want me to kidnap you? Yeah, Yuna replies. She wanted to be kidnapped. So later on, after a bit more battling and the battle coming closer to an end, William just asks Yuna, can I kidnap you? And Yuna replies just, sure, if the mood strikes you. So he just picks up Yuna and fucking runs. Bro just tries kidnapping Yuna, and she does not care. She is like, if anything, she is all for it. She wants it to happen. Not for a kink thing, because she genuinely wants to make him a better person. Oh yeah, by the way, he fails to kidnap her, and instead, she keeps him like a pet. Of course, not like an actual pet, but it felt like that. It felt like that. But, yeah, Yuna basically takes William and forces him to become a better person. How, you may ask? Some kids don't like eating vegetables. My kid doesn't like eating anything that isn't women in an alleyway. From Yuna, referring about William. So yeah, we have William. He's chill, for the most part, except for the fact that we have him in restraints constantly. And we basically have him as prisoner. Which is also what Tatari wants. Tatari is actually on board with this, because if you remember from his notes, he needed to capture this drow and deal with him. So, he's bringing him to Rumbane alive, or at least that's his intention. His intention on agreeing to keep him alive is to give him to Rumbane and have her deal with him. And so, we of course deal with this, and then we end up meeting this other vampire named Wesleyan Thorne. We get off on a good foot with him at least, because he's not like other vampires at least. And he also gets along well with Yuna a little bit. And yeah, eventually we end up leaving this town with William, of course, in tow, bidding farewell to Wesleyan, who Yuna tried very hard to get him to come with us, but he didn't want to. He had his own stuff that he had to attend to, which is fair enough. And before making it to, before heading out of town, Dovahkiin stopped by in the Adventurers Guild, picking up a bunch of different contracts, because that's kind of just what he does in general as a guard, is that he goes around the areas completing some tasks that haven't been completed in the Adventurers Guild, trying to provide good where he could. And the party had like a bit of an option of, do we want to go a bit more towards the north, like over here towards Velowood and Drellian and all that, or do we want to head down here to Sycamus, where they are dealing with this famine, head down to here, and then just deal with stuff that way. Maybe come up here in Velowood to deal with some of their problems in New Gloria, etc., etc. And we decided to go down here towards Sycamus. So the party gets dropped off here at Sycamus, while the caravan, who was originally going to Green Mars, continues on its way to Greenwars, leaving us behind so we can deal with this problem. I won't get into it too much, but because it's just a little, like a kind of a minor contract, a little bit of like a side quest. But mostly what we had dealt with was these parasites that were seeping out, I guess, life energy in the ground, I guess you could kind of mention. It's been killing off crops, killing people, getting them sick. It's been bringing the town towards extinction. They've been trying to import new crops and food in, but it immediately stales out when it comes into contact with the ground in any way. They end up finding out that these weird parasite things have been the root cause, and eventually, after going through some of these tunnels, they find the original source, or the patient zero, quote unquote, which was this like weird, grotesque, zombie looking humanoid thing that they ended up having to kill and deal with. And after that, they had to very fast and as quickly as possible get to Greenwars and have clerics be sent back as soon as possible to cleanse everyone and cleanse the land. So we had half the party stay back and help provide for the citizens and try to keep as many as alive as possible, while the other half went into Greenwars and asked for clerics to be sent to Sigums, which we did. Dovahkiin was a part of the group that went to warn clerics, and he went there along with sorry, not Aurelia at the time, Firen, who also stayed in their clinic for the day to heal up and get better. Meanwhile, Dovahkiin, now in Greenwars, decides exploring out the town a little bit until he finds an interesting person wandering the town. It's a person who looks exactly like a member of the Knights of Light. A member who was the wife of my previous character, Owari Soraya. She looked 1-to-1, even bearing the same name, Isabel Stone. However, she had lost her memories and seemed to be, in terms of personality and background and such, was a completely different person from the Isabel Stone in the statue. Now, out of character for the reasoning for this is because the last campaign had a lot of weird time trickery going on, and that version of Isabel and the version of Isabel Stone that Owari married was the one from the real world, and this version of Isabel Stone is the proper one from this world. And now, we'll go into a bit of Dovahkiin. Dovahkiin has never liked love. He never really felt love ever. However, he did have a celebrity crush, so to speak. And this celebrity crush just so happened to be the unnamed hero's wife, aka Isabel Stone, aka an exact replica of that person standing right in front of him. Needless to say, he is head over heels at first sight. It's like meeting one of his heroes. So he talks to her, does his thing. The Blue Spire Riz, as you can see by the current title of server. Grimmel was an ex-bard. He had a lot of charisma. I guess it's a family thing. Dovahkiin has accidental riz. 'Cause he's more like his mother in personality. He becomes a nervous fucking wreck the second he loses his cat mask. And of course, the second he meets her, it falls off. Like what happened to his mother a lot. And also just like his mother, he becomes a nervous fucking wreck. But she finds it cute because it's kind of like, it's kind of funny, you know. It's like, he's just being a little embarrassed, like he's like a little embarrassed. It's like, oh, it's like a little like golden retriever pup, you know. I don't know. That's the best way I could describe it. Yeah, they get along well, you know. And meanwhile, in Sycamus, people are dying. Yeah. The clerics eventually make it. A few citizens did end up passing away, but they were able to save the rest of them. And they eventually make their way back to Greenwise. And meanwhile, Isabel and Dovahkiin have been getting to know each other. They eventually found the academy that was there. And Dovahkiin turned in some contracts and basically just waited for the party to return. After that, then they had decided to actually they didn't decide to go. They first decided to deal with sorry, this has been a while, so I need to make sure I remember. They decided to find some tabs on this contract that they had for a person named Small Willie. A dwarf leader of a large group of criminals known to manipulate bugs. Small Willie. Also, the reward was doubled if he was brought in alive. So, Firen had the ability to turn into different people. So, he uses William as a disguise because William was actually a member of this large group of criminals and was initially planning to meet up with Small Willie. And who do we have just so with us in our possession as a prisoner? The Mr. William himself! And what does Yuna do? He takes off his chains and trusts him to gather information for us and not run away. What does he do? Because we've been keeping him prisoner and basically more or less torturing him? He runs away straight to where Small Willie was. We lost William. And he warned Small Willie about us. Their entire criminal empire, which basically they had complete control over the town of Grelian, was on guard for us. We were wanted in the town of Grelian, where he was taped, where they were at. As you can see, I wasn't too happy about this. The whole party wasn't very happy about this. Dovahkiin was out for blood. I think about the whole party was. But Yuna, being the airhead, the lovable airhead that we love so much, she wanted him alive still. She still wanted him. She still saw him as a best friend, despite running away. It was our fault that he ran away. Not because she was basically torturing him feeding him bare minimum blood. Cow's blood with small little driplets of her own, which is the equivalent to eating prison food for a human, when he was normally eating things that tasted good to him, in this case, the young women. So from his perspective, Yuna was like the equivalent of a prison guard. Who wouldn't want to get away from that person? Anyway, I'm getting a little off track. So, the party, they end up making it to Grelia. We basically split off into, we got together some guards, some paladins, to come with us for extra reinforcement. So, when we arrived, we decided to do this. Dovahkiin is a Way of Shadow monk. He is able to cast the fucking whatever the fuck it is that basically he has a skill that allows him to cast a spell that gives you like a +10 to your stealth rolls. So most of the party members, most of like our actual party members, basically snuck around. Meanwhile, Frieren, he turned into a Russian criminal, a big buff Russian criminal who had taken captive the paladins as a way to blend in. And so, we all kind of go off. Frieren and the paladins get sent over to where the prison is, where they beat the shit out of those guards that were with them, and they sneak their way up towards to where Small Willie and now William was. Meanwhile, the others were mostly sneaking straight in, mostly Dovahkiin and Tatari, while Yuna was, to be real, I think she was just doing Yuna things. I honestly can't exactly remember. The only thing I remember Yuna doing, in all honesty, was that she accidentally broke into some poor woman's house and scared the shit out of them by turning on invisible while in their house. But that's besides the point. Eventually, they make it to where Small Willie and William are. And, we enter battle. Long story short, they try summoning in bugs to help them fight us, but they end up fighting each other as well as their caretakers, including Small Willie and William. We managed to capture Small Willie alive, and Frieren guiding bolts William, which due to him being a vampire, it turns him into ash. Kills him. Yuna flips the fuck out. She demands. She doesn't ask. Keep in mind, she is in a warlock pack with whispers. And she fucking demands that William be brought back to life. And he accepts. William is now a vampire familiar for Yuna. But she doesn't like that. She's like, no, I don't want him to be a vampire. I want him to be a normal human. I want him to be how he was. And Whispers just tells her, it's not in my power. Do you want William or not? He says, I don't want him like this. So Whispers kills him again. He dies twice. And he was happy being in hell than being with us. Honestly, I think hell is his version of heaven right now, thanks to us. But that's besides the point. We get Small Willie, we capture him, we bring him back to Greenwars, we get double our reward. Yippee! Fast forward, we finally do the main plot. We finally go to school. And our first class, ironically, is with Dovahkiin's good old brother, Cliff Blue Spire. Fuck. There we learn some of the lore, which you can see here. We learn about the different types of vampires. The first type we learn about is the Moroi, or leeches. They are the lowest form of vampire. They're very blind, very stupid, and very weak. However, they do have an excellent sense of smell and work very well together in big packs. The next type is a Balkar. Balkars are lesser vampires that are more focused on melee hand-to-hand combat. They have enhanced strength and speed. So, a Balkar's weakness is range. A Moroi's weakness is existing. Next up, we have a Doligan. Another form of a lesser vampire. This one, however, wields magic, and their arcane abilities are instead enhanced, meaning that their weakness is hand-to-hand combat. Next up, we have Kikimora, which are bestial vampires shaped like bipedal bat creatures. Basically, they're like wild animals that have been turned into vampires. Like animal beasts. Like, yeah, they're basically just animals. And the final type of vampire that we had learned about was one called a Strigoi. These vampires are the truest form of a vampire. These type of vampires have greatly enhanced physical abilities as well as magic. So, unlike the Balkar and the Doligan, who specialize in either melee or magic, Strigoi here are good at both of those. And if that wasn't bad enough, they can also wield unique powers and often take on multiple forms. As you can see down here, there are vampire lords. The vampire lords are the Strigoi. Outside of Wesleyan. Yeah, Wesleyan is also a Strigoi, but Wesleyan is the weakest of all the Strigois. We're actually in the current campaign. I think we are actually slowly catching up to his current power level at the current moment, which is a little bit scary to think about, because we're currently level 6, I believe. But yeah, they have unique powers. They have multiple forms, and the way that Strigois are formed is that one of these lesser vampires, like a Balkar or Doligan, if they consume the blood of their master, aka the one who turned them into a vampire in the first place, then they ascend to a Strigoi. So, the second, I guess not the second of 3 major things I'd say we learned about, maybe like 3 or 4. Next thing we learned about majorly was the vampire lords in particular. The first one you can see here is a name that you can probably recognize because I mentioned it before as being Tatari's lady, Duchess Evelyn Rumbane. She is a powerful leader of the criminal underworld, and she rules over the province of Mistreach over in Estria, which, if we pull up the maps, this is Estria right here. This was the second area that we came to, and that we actually just left. Mistreach is right over here, as you can see, and I believe she was in Misthold, I want to say it was Misthold. It's not very important for the sake of this recap, but it's just good to know. Yeah, her whole thing is that, well, she has a lot of forces at her disposal. She's a criminal leader, so it makes sense. The next one up, and probably this one of the more scarier ones, as well as weird ones, is Silas Nevermore. He is a cult leader, and he reigns over a cult of vampires who have an obsession with disemboweling women and consuming their guts. He likes disemboweling people. He eats their bowels and eats their guts. He guts women in particular. He's also known to manipulate metal, but yeah. Next up, we have Sir Augustus Arenveld, which is honestly probably out of all of these vampire lords, he's probably, I'd say, the nicest or most, I guess, quote-unquote fair, maybe. That's mostly because, he's the king of Almestia, which, if you saw on this map as well, Almestia is right here, and this is the first place that we visited when we arrived at Estria, as it is the port town. But, yes, he is the king of Almestia, and he has a truce, and he basically has a good truces and on really good terms with the majority of the common folk. So, the average citizens. And out of all these lords, he's actually a very kind leader. But, however, he is extremely cruel to his enemies. His whole goal is to just unite the lands under peace, He just wants everything to be peaceful and everyone basically live happily ever after, However, it is unknown if he may have any possible ulterior motives or any other plans outside of this. Next up, Lich King Ro. A powerful lich. We don't really know anything about him, other than he is a powerful lich, and he has a vast command over specifically shadows and the dead. So he's basically kind of like a necromancer, more or less. And finally is Rani Goldclaw, or the Queen of the Dragons of the entire Dark Isles, which is the name of this vast land that this world takes place in. She mysteriously went missing after this thing called the Great Dragon Culling, and nobody knows if someone may have taken her place or what happened to her. She is currently missing in action. While this was happening and we were going to school and everything, Yuna had actually left the party, so she was not here during this time, and she had actually, after making it back from Drellian back to Greenwars, while everyone else went to school and did their thing, she actually set off all the way back to Brindale. And there, she saw what could best be described as the consequences of her actions. But before that, along the way, actually, she heard in her carriage some interesting squeaking noises coming from a mouse. And her being curious and loving animals, she finds it and immediately tries keeping it as a pet. Well, it just so happened that this pet turns into our good old friend Wesleyan Thorne. He's there mostly because he kind of more or less saw what happened through his rat form and wanted to make sure that Yuna didn't do anything stupid and get herself killed. Those two talk for a while, and they actually start to form a very solid bond, beginning of a very close friendship even. And Yuna is actually able to convince Wesleyan Thorne, the lowest Strigoi of all the Strigois, to actually join us and help us in our objective of annihilating the vampire lords. So, those two eventually make it together back to Brindale, where Yuna finds these what she saw as very lovable and huggable little pink bears and unicorns trotting around the town. She thought these were very, very nice looking. But meanwhile, on Wesleyan's side, what he witnessed were gruesome, foul beasts terrorizing the entire town. Blood everywhere. The town had been left to ruin. Long story short, Yuna and Wesleyan had to beat up these animals. Yuna being very sad as she saw some of them start to puke up rainbows after nearly dying, and she ends up actually going unconscious during this battle. And what happens next is left up to interpretation. But long story short, Wesleyan is just barely able to defeat most of the monsters. And so, they quickly head back from Brindale, back to Greenwars, to warn the rest of the party. And so, when they arrive, both Grimmel and Cliff agree to accompany Wesleyan back to Brindale to help deal with this issue. Meanwhile, Grimmel and Cliff decide to leave Dovahkiin in charge, as he seems the most reliable, and most of the party also wants Dovahkiin to be in charge, as he is a fellow Blue Spire. And he initially hates the idea of being in charge, of being a leader. He doesn't think that he's up for it, as technically tied for the youngest Blue Spire, because technically Dovahkiin does have a twin, but we haven't met her yet. Even in the current part of the campaign, we have not met her yet, but she does exist. So as one of the youngest Blue Spires, he doesn't feel like he should be the one in charge, but ultimately, he does. He leads, and he actually does a very good job, despite being quite a nervous wreck sometimes. He does very well, and he is able to continue having some peaceful times in the kingdom for a few days, up until one day. Isabel and Dovahkiin had just finished with a date and were returning to the kingdom when suddenly there was this weird ash coming out of the sky, slowly trickling down, and when you looked up, it looked cloudy. Very cloudy. It almost looked like it was going to storm. But it was getting closer. And as it appeared to get closer, the ash continued until it was almost a fog. No one could see anything. Dovahkiin and Isabel had to hide in a nearby building, a library. And the only thing that could best be described as this scenario is that it looked like the sky was falling down upon the kingdom. Meanwhile, while this was happening, for Tatari, he was just rummaging around and ended up finding this pottery shop with a actually, no, we haven't gotten to that. I'm sorry, scratch that. Tatari was just walking around town, not really knowing what to do, because up until this point, he normally just shadows over people. Most notably, either Dovahkiin or Oland, as those are his two closest companions. But he wasn't able to do that, so he was just wandering around doing whatever. And that's when that had started happening. The sky appeared to be falling down, the ash getting worse and worse until he could barely breathe. He found a nearby pottery shop that he was able to take refuge in, the kind old lady. And she had mentioned something about losing her cat, and of course, being worried, she wanted to go out there and try to find it before it got too bad. But he had kept her safe, kept her inside, and promised that we would be able to find said cat once everything had passed. Meanwhile, in the library, Firen was catching up on some studies and getting to know a good friend that she had just met, and also developing a little bit of a crush. With Alice also being there as a little bit of a third wheel, also being jealous because had a little bit of a love triangle going on between there. Alice liking Firen, Firen liking this specific person, you know, so there's a little bit of jealousy going on there. So that eventually happens, but they don't notice it at first because they're inside. They don't notice until later. So, going back to Dovahkiin and Isabel, Dovahkiin is trying to calm the children down. There's a lot of children in this building that he is in, and they're asking, "Are we gonna die?" And they're just being very worried. So he calms them down. He tells them about many stories, about the legendary heroes from the last campaign, the Knights of Light. Many different stories he's heard, a lot of cool different things. And one of the children asks, I hope the Knights of Light, they come to save us too. Dovahkiin is heartbroken by this, as he knows that the majority of the Knights of Light are dead by now. Only maybe 3 left in existence, one of which being his father. But despite that, he still puts on as big of a smile as he could and says, I hope so too. In that moment, they hear a mighty and loud draconic roar. The majority of the party actually knows Draconic. Dovahkiin knows Draconic, thanks to learning it from Grimmel, as the Knights of Light also had a dragon in their party. Tatari would obviously know it, because he's a dragonborn. Isabel knows it, for specific reasons we'll get to in a second. The only ones who doesn't know it, I believe, was Alice. I believe Fearon might have known it as well. So, because of that, we know what the dragon was after. He wanted the death of all mortals. And he started destroying, demolishing this whole kingdom. So, both Fearon and Dovahkiin head out from where they were, from their hiding. And they attempt to confront this beast. Though meanwhile, in the place, in the house that Isabel and Dovahkiin were in, at the same time, Isabel was having a panic attack. Dovahkiin was torn between, do I go out there? Do I help try to slay this beast? Die trying, or at least try to stop him? Do I just stay in here and try to comfort everyone the best I can, protect these people in here? Ultimately, he decides it'd be best to try to head out there and keep the dragon away from the buildings and have it focus on him. But of course, before he goes out, he tries to comfort Isabel a little bit, trying to hug her, but mysteriously, she's getting very hot, like a burning, like you're touching a stove. Despite this, he still tries to comfort her briefly as much as he can, taking some fire damage in the process. He promises that he'll be back. So he goes out with the assist of Fearon, and they attempt to attack this creature and stall it. But all of their attacks miss. They get hurt pretty bad. Next thing we know, from the building that Dovahkiin was in, it suddenly explodes, emerging a young red dragon, enraged, speaking broken Draconic, that even the people who know Draconic, they cannot understand what it's saying. All we know is that it's mad, it's infuriated, and it can't control itself. So, with the assistance of that dragon, they continue battling. But eventually, both Dovahkiin and Fearon get knocked out in the process, only leaving the black dragon and the red dragon to duke it out. Because no one left was conscious or paying attention to this fight, we don't know what exactly transpired. We only know of what came the next morning. The next morning, the entire kingdom was in ruins. Dovahkiin was the first to awaken. He looked around and he saw ruins. He saw the building he had left Isabel and all of those children and people in. He immediately runs to it, scraping around all the debris he can, hoping that he doesn't see what he doesn't want to see. Good news for him, at least. Isabel's corpse wasn't there. The bad news, the rest of them were. All of those children that he had comforted, all of those concerned people, all of their bodies laid there, dead, crushed, engulfed in flame. the only body he couldn't find was the body of Isabel's. The next person to awake was Yuna, who had went off and hid herself away in a library. She also joined in on this battle eventually, but she felt the same as the others. She was the next to awaken. In the distance, she saw the body of the red dragon. But suddenly started morphing, changing. What was the red dragon, now sitting there, was the naked body of Isabel Stone. She was the red dragon. She had accidentally killed all of those people. Dovahkiin saw this and also quickly ran over to comfort her. Obviously, they wrap her up so she's not exposed. And Dovahkiin then clicks that she was the red dragon and she was the one kind of responsible for the deaths of those children, but he chooses to forbade this information to Isabel when she soon wakes up. Frieren eventually wakes up and provides some of his spare clothes to her, so she at least has something to wear. And eventually the others all get up too. And when Tatari awakes, he goes to the rest of the party and introduces them to that kind old lady that helped him. All of her pottery has been destroyed, but she's fine, she's alive. Tatari had used his body to protect her, and they are both still alive. So, they're told about the situation of her cat. It was a Tressum cat that was pregnant, and she was worried that it might have became endangered. So, the party ran around in town trying to find it. Yuna cast Speak with Animals, and she eventually was able to find the cat. Alongside, I believe, 7 different kittens alongside her. The cat was obviously terrified. Thanks to Yuna's Speak with Animals, it told her to stay away out of warning, but she calmed it down, told her that we were here to help, to reunite her with her owner. So she settled down and apologized and cooperated. Yuna had given a cloak to allow her and her kittens to sit in, so the cat brings all of the kittens into the cloak and sits in it herself and allows to be taken back to her owner, where they happily reunite. Both the cat and the owner are eternally grateful, and the cat even offers to allow us to have some of her kittens as a thank you. So most of the party members get their own kitten. Though we leave 2 behind for the cat to take care of herself alongside with the owner. And each of the party members gets their own little kitten to take care of. Dovahkiin gets a black cat that with a wing deformity, as Tressums do have wings. This Tressum, however, had a wing deformity. One of them was smaller than the other. Chances are it may not be able to fly, or at least, if possible, not for long. So, he decides to take in this kitten. It's a female. He names this kitten Raven, after Runaria's alter ego as well, the Raven Knight. It was a little memorial to his lost mother, alongside the mask that he wears, which no longer bears a raven look, it's more of a cat look, but still, he decided to name his cat Raven. Huna got an albino kitten from the litter. I don't remember the name of the rest of the kittens, but I believe Tatari, I want to say he got one that was, I believe he got a ginger one, I want to say. And I couldn't tell you what the rest of them were. It's been too long. But we all got our kittens. And so, Dovahkiin, being the current leader, as Grimmel and the others still have not returned, he gets together what people are left and what guards are left, prepares some carriages to send whatever people are left still alive to the nearby area of New Gloria, so they aren't just left with a ruined kingdom. While it's being repaired, they can have somewhere else to go. So, people prepare for that. Huna prepares for this while still having speak with animals, goes out to try to find some horses for the carriages. And she ends up meeting up with 2 horses. Gregory and Theodore! As you could tell, we love these fucking horses because they talked like, "Oh, how are you, Gregory? Oh, I am doing amazing, Theodore." It was great. I wish we had a recording of it, but she talks to these horses. They get off so well, and they agree to help us, assist us with traversing these carts with the promises of sweet street sugar cubes and food and apples, as well as being able to see some of the female horses. And so, everyone gets together eventually, and we set off for New Gloria. Before they left, Dovahkiin also set up a sign at the base of what was left of the Greenwars Kingdom, and said that the kingdom was currently under repairs, and for all people to please redirect to New Gloria. And the party stays here for about a day-ish before they are finally, before they decide to complete another contract that they never was able to complete yet. And this one was the Slaughter Wing, as well as the Goblin Problem. They were both nearby, over in the area of Velowood, this area, where they were having a bit of a goblin problem in Velowood. The goblins were hungry, and they were stealing their food and their children. and they needed someone to help slay these goblins and deal with them. When we arrived, we decided to take a little bit of a unique approach to this. Yuna has a unique ability. It's pretty much disguised self. She disguised herself as a goblin. However, it's a little bit different. Instead of lasting only an hour, Yuna's is able to last until a long rest, or she reaches 0 HP. Thus she gets forced back into her normal form. However, the downside is that she gets implanted memories of said thing she turns into. And for the duration of her being turned into that creature, she genuinely believes she is one of them. Meaning, the only way you could tell that this person is in a disguise is through detect magic. Detecting their thoughts backs up that they are really a goblin, for example. Now, why do I mention this? Because Yuna shape-shifted into a goblin, becoming Scrungle for the first time. So we managed to actually talk with these goblins diplomatically, where we discover that they aren't able to get enough food. They have to get more food than usual, that their farms are not able to keep up with. So, because of this weird beast that forces them to give out sacrifices, or else they'll be killed. So what we decide to do is that we, in exchange of providing them with enough seeds to create farms of their own and be able to farm and hunt freely, we would deal with this beast and kill it, dealing with the goblin problem through more peaceful matters. Long story short, Dovahkiin stays behind and he encounters this beast. He has this horn that allows him to call for guards, or in this position, the others, and he blows on it and gets into combat with this creature, where he immediately turns into stone. Yeah. He tried to attack it, he got poisoned, and turned to stone. So by the time that the others arrived, they saw the statue of Dovahkiin Bluespire and this giant fucking beast, hungry and angry. We of course end up dealing with the beast. We find out that we can create an antidote using some of its components. We eventually make up an antidote, feed it to Dovahkiin, and everything is all hunky-dory. And so, after this is done, they get the reward and head back over to New Gloria. And they finally meet back up with Grimmel, Cliff, and Wesley and Thorne, where they had said that they had dealt with most of the beasts that were going on there, and that we needed to depart soon to Estria. And they had gotten together a someone who could get us there. However, there were drow who were looking kill him. So we had to protect this escort, or else we were not getting to Estria. So long story short, we end up ambushing this escort. We end up ambushing the drow, who revealing that we're with Oland in some capacity. We did end up capturing Oland, and he was willing to work with us for now, as the others had kind of cast him out and kind of betrayed him a little bit, so he had his reasons for wanting to work with us, at least. So we dealt with them. We actually turned one of them into stone, thanks to Yuna keeping the head of that beast that we had slain that turns them into stone. And we turned one into stone that we could use for information much later on. So, fast forward a bit, and we finally make it to Estria, specifically Almestia, down here, where while we're waiting to get checked in front of us, we meet two other new individuals. A person wearing a mysterious mask who wields a glaive, mostly encapsulated by a red cloak. I believe I could actually pull up the character image here if I scroll up. This is the first one, glaive. This is kind of the representation. And the other one was a human wizard who went by Arwal. The two were siblings, and they were there to slay vampires. They were going around completing requests, trying to earn some money. They have a very interesting first encounter with our party, as Alice, the well-known criminal, tries to convince the guards to steal something from them or something, and then she tries using a mage hand to rob something off of them. After saying that after attempting to already, she tries to do it with a mage hand, and she fails again, and she gets warned. Meanwhile, Yuna believes that she herself is one of the guards, and turns around in the same formation as the other two, scolding Alice not to do that, or else we're gonna throw you in the slammer. The guards look at each other and what the fuck is she doing? Long story short, everyone gets in all hunky-dory, and we all kind of go off doing our own thing. Most of the others, I believe, go to a library to read and study up. Meanwhile, Dovahkiin, as well as these other two figures, head over to the Adventurers Guild. Dovahkiin heads over to look at some of the requests, and that's where he formally meets those other two. And that's where we discover this interesting request about this legendary contract of the Fog of Madness, about Gamea being enveloped in a fog with something in it. The hunters aren't safe to hunt in the forests, and they rarely ever come back. And the ones who do speak of maddening things. Something appears to be out there, and it's already killed 2 Nightclaws. To put into perspective, Nightclaws are known as currently the most powerful monster slayers. And whatever was out there killed 2 of them. And this is a very hefty reward. 1,200 gold. You may be wondering why this isn't crossed out. We completed this, but we never went back to get our reward. You may be wondering why we were stupid enough to complete this request of 1,200 gold and not go back to claim it. You may wonder. We'll get to that when we completed this contract. Eventually, Dovahkiin and the 2 others, they decide on collaborating, as Dovahkiin has a full party and they could potentially use some of the help. They are a little bit skeptical at first because that would mean that they would get less of a cut from completing each of these requests compared to if they just did it themselves. But they eventually agree, thinking that, yeah, the extra help could be appreciated. So he goes out to find the others so they can meet them and know what they're getting into. That's where we cut to the POV of the rest of the party, who, while in the library, there was a paladin who had walked in and caught sight of Wesley and Thorne, immediately wanting to fight him because he's a vampire, you know, that's fair enough. And they tried to keep this from happening and all that, but it fails. They go outside and have a quick fisticuffs. The paladin gets his fucking ass beat, and we come in to see them having a big old scabbard in the front of a library, beating the shit out of each other. And that's quite a great first impression for these 2 new potential recruits to see that they're having a fucking disturbance of peace in the streets. So, understandably, the other 2 are very skeptical. They're starting to regret trusting Dovahkiin. So him, desperate to try to save face, he's just like, I'm so sorry. This isn't something that normally happens. They're normally much more normal. We still have yet to prove that to them, by the way. But yeah, some fucking how we're able to convince them to stay with us. Mostly for the fact that they need money, I think. I think that's mostly what kept them there, is that we need money, and the more people to complete the quest, the easier it will be, the easier we can get our money. So yeah, long story short, while we're there, Yuna takes the head and decides to create it into this kind of like staff, or like quarterstaff, with like the head on the front of it that can petrify people. She doesn't have enough money for it at the moment, so they hold it for her until she can come back and purchase it properly. So, the party creates a bit of like a plan. They decide that they'll head off over to, first, I believe, Rold to complete a request here. Then they head up to Morganvid and then Varric Hollow. This is a stop for Tatari, as he needed to meet his lady, an updater that William has been killed. Then they go up to Varacalo to complete a request up there. Then they would head down to complete the legendary contract. Then head through here to Wyvern's Rest, and up here to Cliffstep to finish that off. It'd be an efficient route to complete a lot of easy contracts. And starting off for a while, it was. We completed the rolled one without a hitch. Yuna had obtained a ghoul fetus. You heard me right. Yuna, we managed to acquire a ghoul fetus, and she is attempting to raise it as one of her own. So, then we go up to Varacalo. The request itself went fine. Glaive's real identity came out, and it was revealed that he was a she, Glaive was a woman, and Dovahkiin kind of started feeling true feelings for her and gave up on Isabel, which was alright because they didn't really go too far into their romance or anything. They never got together or anything. But yeah, they kind of talk and get to know each other, Dovahkiin and Glaive. And while that's happening, Yuna ends up meeting, trying to make Isabel feel a little bit better. They meet up with someone named Aster Thorne. You may recognize Thorne with Wesleyan Thorne. Yeah, they're related. But yeah, Yuna and Aster, they get off really well. Same with Isabella a little bit, but by that point Isabella had fallen asleep or something like that. And Aster and Yuna get along very well because they are both very similar in intelligence. They are not the brightest. Wesleyan eventually came in to check on Yuna, as by this point Wesleyan and Yuna had formed a very close bond with each other. They are very good friends by this point. And he discovers that Aster had came, and Aster has a warlock pact with Wesleyan's sister, Evelyn Thorne, I want to say. Hold on. I need to remember the name exact. It's Eupharia Thorne, yes. She has a pact with Eupharia Thorne, and Wesleyan does not like that. He hates his sister and hates that Aster is having to be manipulated by Eupharia, being used. Aster's too dumb to know this, but he still doesn't like it and wants to confront his sister at the Thorne Manor. Yuna at first wants to come with because that's her close friend, and she wants to make sure that he's alright. It's a fair reaction, but at first he doesn't want her to, but eventually she pulls on his leg enough to where he reluctantly agrees to let them both come with. So they go back to the inn where the others were, and Wesleyan, while the other two were getting ready, Wesleyan came to the others, Dovahkiin, Glaive, and Arwal, to inform them about what they were planning to do. And Glaive and Dovahkiin Dovahkiin unintentionally, Glaive intentionally, kind of uses his bond of Yuna against him and convinces him that you should go in alone. She could die from this, you know. Dovahkiin was just trying to do this so Yuna could stay safe and not get hurt, because he genuinely believed that Wesleyan could handle himself. He was very powerful compared to the others, so he felt like, I'm sure he could handle this. It's only his sister. We know his sister won't do anything to hurt him because she loves him. So he decides to head off without telling Yuna or anything. He just leaves. And when Yuna and Aster find this out, they are not happy. And Yuna decides, probably, like, I'm just going to head out again. Fuck this shit. And then she's talking to Aster and is like, okay, how are we gonna get there? How are we gonna fly there or something? Because it's like in this mountain. She doesn't know how to fly there. So she just turns straight back around, comes over to Dovahkiin, and says, oh, how do we fly over there? Meanwhile, Dovahkiin is mid-fucking panic attack because he's worried about losing his friends, and this is giving him PTSD from when he was younger. So he fucking looks over at her, screams, and passes the fuck out in fear. And Yuna just stares at him like, well, he's being really weird, what the fuck? And she basically just completely forgets immediately about, like, actually being angry at them. So, long story short, they stay at Varric Hollow for a few days, waiting for Wesleyan to return. He never does. They get a little bit worried, but they decide to continue on with their original plan. And they head to Gamea, where we end up meeting at right before the entrance of the town. We find this half-orc running out, screaming like crazy about birds chasing them. When we looked back, there's nothing there, and she was also a little bit confused, but we continued on. We let her come with us. Yuna and the half-orc get along very well, and they try to head into the town because she got off the caravan, and they suddenly disappear. They try to call out to them. Some of the members hop out of the caravan, and then they also disappear. Dovahkiin notices this and urges for everyone who is still in the caravan to stay in it. And he, with the help of Gregory and Theodore, who are still with us, we managed to try to navigate our way, and we eventually find the gate entrance. Meanwhile, this half-orc, who introduces herself as Nisha, and Yuna re-encounter these weird bat creatures, which they end up eventually defeating, and after doing so, they also eventually find the gate. For Glaive and Freerin, who by this point, back during that fight with the drow, I forgot to mention this, but mid-combat in that fight with the drow, Freerin had changed gender and names mid-combat. So Freerin is now actually Aurelia, and he is now a she. So it's now Aurelia and it's a she. So Glaive and now Aurelia. Glaive has a bunch of flashbacks from her fight, from like her past, and from her hate of vampires and such. And I don't remember. I think Aurelia and Glaive saw the same things together, and they managed to get through their stuff and find the entrance to the gate as well. And so they eventually make it into the town, where they stay there for a few days trying to figure out everything of what's happening. Eventually they find out that this hag had asked this fae to basically take control of this town and feast, you know? For the hell of it. And this hag was after someone in this town. This lady named Monoko, who had these interesting eyes, and she had the ability to see in the future. Yuna and Dovahkiin were the ones who first encountered both the hag and this lady, and Yuna and Dovahkiin both agree to keep her safe by any means, to protect her. Yuna trusts this on Dovahkiin, as well as Grimmel. She trusts this upon both Dovahkiin and Grimmel, which they agree upon. However, eventually the rest of the party meets up with this hag and interrogates her. The Yuna gets her familiar, known as Jockin, to talk to this hag. And Jockin decides to make a deal with the hag in that he would give away his firstborn son to the hag in exchange for 3 questions that she would have to answer 100% truthfully. Which Jockin does this shit without a hitch. He just snaps his fingers, summons his firstborn child, and is just like, hey, you're going with this lady, and just pushes the child, like, I don't even know, just like pushed him like towards her and just went into her, ate him, I guess, I don't know. And we get information. We know that the weakness to this fae is cold iron, I believe it was, or cold steel, one of the two. Second, we found out that she was the reason that the fae is here in the first place, and she could recall it at any time if they had given her what she wanted. AKA Monoko, which Aurelia decides to do. She comes to Grimmel and asks if her and Monoko can go shopping together. Grimmel, of course, agrees, as this is a trusted party member. He wouldn't expect her to do anything bad. Well, in reality, what Aurelia did is that she sent Monoko straight to the hag. And the hag lifted the curse in the town, and the fae left. And the hag took Monoko and left. Meanwhile, for the others, they were dealing with a little bit of a problem of their own, as Jockin decided to go a little bit haywall a little bit and do a little bit of a funny, trying to take over the town for himself. So he took Isabelle, who had turned into a dragon again, enlarged her, and rode on her back, saying, "Listen to me, Lord Jockin, I am the ruler of this town," or whatever it was. We had to defeat all that. It was a bit more painful than it should have been. And after trying to calm down from that a little bit, suddenly the fog lifted from the town, and we were confused. We ran to the inn to tell the others, and that's when we're revealed by Grimmel that Minoko's gone, and so is Aurelia. So we went out in search of them. Yuna was the first. She found Aurelia alone, looking to be quite battered. Yuna interrogates Aurelia, knowing that Minoko was with her, and asks where she is. She denies everything. She says that we got attacked by the hag. Minoko got stolen. She had lied. Yuna had saw through this lie. The rest of the party, not so much. Yuna, this is the third time Yuna had lost someone close to her that we had wanted to protect. She is done with this party. She leaves for Wyvern's Rest alone. She doesn't care about any of them anymore. She has been forsaken for the last time. Eventually, Dovahkiin catches up and hears the same story. And he enters all big despair. He failed being a good leader and friend to the others. He decided to give up on being Catman and just stay as the Blue Isle Guard Dovahkiin Bluespine. He gave the mask back to his father, and eventually the party dispatched towards Wyvern's Rest, trying to see if they could catch up to Yuna. But eventually the party divides. Glaive, Arwal, and Dovahkiin leave. The horses halt and ask, "Hey, where's that little witch girl that we liked?" And Aurelia said that she ran away. And they're like, "Well, screw this. I don't want to be here if not for that little witch lady." They chew out of their reins and run away. Grimmel decides, well, we still need to find Yuna and stuff, so he goes off on his own towards Wyvern's Rest. And people left was Isabel, and we had also recently reunited with her father at this point. So they decide to go back to Nightwind, the Nightclaw, the place where the Nightclaws live. Isabel is a Nightclaw, and so is her father. They are Order of the Mutant Blood Hunters, and they basically use beast forms to fight beasts. Before leaving, Dovahkiin did ask if they could train him in the way of the Nightclaws and blood hunting, and they revealed to him where they are in Nightwind. So he would eventually go there after trying to help Yuna. And then all that was left in the carriage was Aurelia. The rest of the party left. Even the horses abandoned her. She was alone. It was her fault in the first place. She took Minoko and gave her to a hag. Just so just so she didn't have to conquer her fears. But in the next moment, a moment nobody expected, there was a sudden crash at the end of the caravan. Standing there was Wesleyan Thorne. He was confused. He entered the caravan and stared at Aurelia. Where is everyone? Where's Yuna? What happened? She had told him about everything that happened, but forebode the part that it was her fault. She tried telling the same lie that she told the rest of the party, that they got into a battle with the hag and she got stolen. Wesleyan immediately saw through this. He like kicked away a basket and lifted her up by the brink of her neck and screamed at her. Where is Yuna? She freezes. She, terrified, tells the truth. It was her fault. He slams her against the wall, tempted to kill her right there. But he stops himself. He doesn't want to become that much of a monster. Instead, he tells Aurelia that we are going to find Yuna, and you all are going to apologize for making her feel that way. By this point, some of the others had heard about what happened and turned back. Specifically Glaive, Dovahkiin, and Arwal. And they all agree to travel together to try to find Yuna and make amends, however possible. So, meanwhile, while this was happening, Alice had stayed behind in Almestia. And as well as Dovahkiin's stepsister, Valithia, the masked figure. Or as everyone knew her as, Val. Because Valithia is actually the final boss of our last campaign. But that's besides the point. She's been redeemed. Val and Alice finally decide that may need to catch up to the others. So they start making their way towards Wyvern's Rest. Along the way, they meet up with her brother, as well as some other paladins, trying to hunt our party, actually, but they didn't know this at the time. And they were arguing about where to go. By this point, they were in the Estrian wildlands around here, and the others were wanting to head up north towards Wyvern's Rest. Her brother, on the other hand, wanted to go south towards here. Alice comes in and she reunites with her brother and scolds him after figuring out their plan, and that's her party that he was talking about, and she was going to force him to apologize to us the next time we met up. Fast forward a bit, and both Alice and Val, as well as what bit of the party was with us at the time, Wesleyan, Aurelia, Dovahkiin, Glaive, and Arwal reunited. Alice was able to more properly meet Glaive and Arwal, and some of those paladins there actually seemed to know Glaive and Arwal, and one of them accidentally slipped up and called Glaive by her real name, Azalea. I believe one of the only people who heard this is Dovahkiin, because he was sitting near her at the time, and he had asked her about it and asked if she preferred that name or no, it wasn't. When he heard it, he decided not to mention anything about it and still called her Glaive out of respect. But yeah, eventually they enter Wyvern's Rest. They're more focused on finding the whereabouts of Yuna, really, than trying to actually complete the original contract. At this point, we didn't care about the contracts. We just needed to get her back. And eventually, we find an inn who had recognized Yuna, and he had been told to specifically give us a book made by her. I can't really say the exact contents of it anymore, but it was extremely heartfelt, and it made everyone cry, and gave us hope to find her. If we truly wanted to find her, then we'd be able to go to Cliffstep to find more information. So that's what we did. We made it to Cliffstep, and there we had overheard about some weird religious get-together in Talion city up here. And we had also gotten some leads that Yuna would be there. So we made our trek towards the great city. Though before we did, at Cliffstep, we did reunite with one of our friends, Nisha.
Hello, my name is Carbon, and I play Nisha in the Legacy of Thorne. I will be recapping the Nisha side story that occurred between Gamea and Wyvern's Rest. For a bit of context, I had missed 2 sessions due to a mistake on my part, and to make up for this, I did a canon side story to explain why Nisha wasn't there. The explanation that we settled on was that she had passed out for the remainder of the time before the incident at Gamea was resolved, and woke up after the party had already left. When Nisha woke up, she asked the innkeep if he knew where her party had gone, and learned they had set out for Wyvern's Rest. She navigated the forest nearby, albeit a bit poorly, and ended up north of her intended direction at Cliffstep. When she arrives, she sees several corpses laying around, and on closer inspection, they have no apparent wounds and had died recently. While investigating some houses, she notices a figure escape into the attic, and upon reaching the attic, she encounters an elven child in rags, looking absolutely terrified. The child asks Nisha to leave, sounding extremely fearful. Not for herself, but rather for Nisha. But Nisha reassures the child, saying, "I swear on my life, I will not lay a finger on you." The child now says that when people touch her, they get hurt. She thinks she's a monster. Nisha tells her it's not her fault and offers to introduce her to her party who might be able to help her with her condition. They then make their way to Wyvern's Rest, where the main story continues. Thank you for having me. I will now turn it back to Ender.
Okay, so the party reunited with Nisha and our new friend Amaya, where we also learned about Amaya's different abilities and her weird touch of death. However, soon after we reunited, that's when we overheard those paladins, and we had our reasoning to go to the great city of Talion, up here. Which, there was 2 different paths that we were able to mainly take. There was one that would take a little bit longer, which would be to go all the way down this way and then all the way around, all the way up to the city. Or we could skip going this way and just kind of mountain climb up here and make it straight to the city, which would be faster, but on the downside we would be a little bit more tired over it. Us, however, being very wanting to get to Yuna as soon as possible before anything bad happens, we decided on the latter. Get there as fast as possible at the sake of maybe some of our energy. And we had to make some saving throws, and surprisingly, we actually made it up without too much of a hitch. Some of the players obviously were a bit tired. Some of them could still go a little bit more, though. Like, for example, Dovahkiin. He is pretty physically adept, so he was still pretty okay for the most part. We did at least have one very close call with, I believe it was, I want to say Alice, where she almost fell and hit Amaya on the way down. And the way that Amaya touching player characters works versus NPCs is a little bit different. She doesn't immediately kill us dead if she touches us. We instead take some necrotic damage. I forget exactly how much. I want to say it's like 3d6. Long story short, it's still, you don't want to get touched by her. Even more so if you're an NPC. Because if you're an NPC, you're just fucking dead. But yeah, like I said, we made it there without too much of a hitch. Sure, some of us were tired, but we were able to keep going. So once we made it into the great city, Nisha had briefly stayed behind while the rest of the party went straight in. While Nisha stayed behind, she was kind of a little bit off track, doing what Nisha does best, and she eventually tried catching up. But then, right as she entered the gate of the city, she thought about Amaya, and thought it would be best to have her stay outside, or maybe both of them could stay together outside of the city to prevent further casualties, trying to be careful and thoughtful of her. So Nisha does a 180 to try to turn back and ask Amaya to stay put. But the second she does a 180, when she turns around, she still sees the city, like she never made the turn in the first place. And soon afterwards, Amaya comes in, and she turns to Amaya and says, "Oh, there you are. I think you should stay outside of the city for the sake of importance, of trying to keep yourself safe and as well as other citizens, just to be safe. And they try to turn again. The same thing happens. They aren't able to turn around. They do this for about 5 to 10 minutes before they finally eventually give up, and it's like, okay, something here is preventing us from leaving. So they venture a little further into the city and manage to catch up to the party, who went to an inn to try to rest up. The moment that Nisha opens the door, they are met with the aftermaths of a giant battle. Many ashed bodies of vampires along the ground, alongside a few drows, with some of the party members still up, some are down, and Glaive, for some reason, with a taste or need of blood. Switching over to what the party was doing while Nisha and Amaya were doing their thing, they had went straight on ahead, determined to try to find Juna and more information. But some of the party members were really tired, and they were wanting to at least get a nap before we continued further. So after a bit of conversating and negotiating, we decide that the ones who need to rest will rest, while the rest goes out for clues. So, we make it to an inn. And when they enter, they are met with a few different things. First, I should actually clarify something that I just realized I forgot to clarify. Back in Varric Hollow, what Tatari was doing, he had actually tailed Wesleyan and made it to the Thorne Manor. And while he was there, the original idea was to save Wesleyan, but he failed very hard. And he was given a bit of a deal, so to say. His life, or the party's life. Or more so, I should say, his life as well as his lady's life, in exchange for the party's. He was stuck in a very hard place. Ultimately, he had to sacrifice the party for the sake of his life as well as his lady's. So, he told Euphoria Thorne everything about the party. And Wesleyan had told the others about this, that Tatari had betrayed them. And would you just so happen to think of the first one they see in there is a green dragonborn holding a lute and singing some nice old songs. This was not Tatari. They just had some similarities. They were both a dragonborn and both a bard. but sitting next to them was a black dragonborn playing the flute hippily happily. That was Tatari. He had set up an ambush for the party. Runebane's soldiers soon flooded into this inn. We were surrounded. Tatari, stopping his music, approaches the party and says, "Oh, it's been a while, friends. I'm sorry about this, but it was my life for yours. I hope you understand." And an empowered Tatari, who has now become Strigoi himself, fights against the party alongside Runebane vampire reinforcements. That's not all. Off of some bar counter seats has some drow who are looking for revenge against us as well, for killing the others who were trying to take over our vessel to get to Almestia and /Estria in the first place. So we are stuck in this situation where we have to deal with both Tatari, the rest of some Runebanes, and the drow. But as we begin our battle, a familiar face sits down his glass and says, "Well, friends, seems like you've got yourself in a bit of a pickle. Good thing I'm here to help now. Rimmel just so happened to be in this inn with us. And rolling a nat 1, he immediately steps up, tries to run over to stab Tatari, and immediately falls flat first on his face. Gribble did all this epic cool shit to roll a nat fucking 1. Thank you, Father. Thank you so much. Anyways, the battle goes on for a decent while. It starts off very bad. First turn, Tatari is able to paralyze both Wesley and Thorne and Dovahkiin in place. Two of the party's biggest heavy hitters, outside of maybe Glaive, who was with us, and Nisha, who was busy trying to do a 180 out of the city and failing. So, at first it was a bit bleak, and to make it worse, Tatari had actually double enstrained Dovahkiin by using his little magical cloak that he has to ensnare him on top of this paralysis he was already in. And this lasts for a while, and the party becomes very desperate. And this is where we go into a bit of a conversation that I intentionally left out between Wesleyan and Glaive up to this point. So, back in Cliffstep, they had talked, and it was revealed that that Wesleyan knew of an Azalea who was known, before going missing, as a half-vampire. So, Glaive obviously is having a midlife crisis over this, as she hates vampires. Her whole thing was wanting to kill them. And now she's being told that she may be a half-vampire. So Wesleyan gives her this vial of blood to have her test to see if she does have a taste or need of blood that's just currently just sitting dormant. She decided to hold on to it and not drink it immediately. Until this moment. Out of desperatity, she takes out that blood, gulps it down. The next thing she knows, her strength is multiplied by a lot. And she finally awakens. Dormant vampire powers. Albeit not as strong as only being a half vampire. Still impressive nevertheless. She is able to hold her own, but she's not exactly quite herself either. Eventually, both Dovahkiin and Wesleyan break out of their restraints, and Dovahkiin immediately heads to Tatari to try finishing him off. He gets off 2 very good strikes, and Tatari realizes he's dead no matter what. So, as a way to go down with who he can still considers his best friend, he prepares his flute and announces, "If I'm going down, I want you with me, Dovahkiin," and attempts to cast a fireball on top of both of us. But a giant clutch from Arwal as he counterspells, and it poofs up in Tatari's face. Tatari then just gives up. He goes down on his knees, opens his arms out wide to Dovahkiin, and just says, "Do it. If I would want anyone to strike me down, I would rather it be you, old friend." And Dovahkiin, obviously very saddened by this, he's just in pain. He tells him, "Goodbye, old friend," before peacefully flashing away his neck. His head falls to the ground, with his body soon following. Dovahkiin, out of respect, he gets a memento to remember Tatari by at least. His cloak has now become dormant, and it just idly floats by. Dovahkiin decides to pick it up, becomes attuned with it. Memento of remembering him by. Dovahkiin now wears the same cloak of Tatari's, and is able to use it the same way, of course. But after the fall of Tatari, the rest of the battle goes pretty smoothly now, with our main hitters back in action, and goes by pretty well without a hitch. After the combat ends, that's when the downsides of Glaive's vampirism takes place. Arwal and Dovahkiin both check in on Glaive. Dovahkiin, because now, at this point, Dovahkiin and Glaive have officially started dating, and he wants to make sure she's alright. And Glaive immediately chomps down on Narwhal's hand, sucking some of his blood out, before she, for the most part, returns to her senses. Or she does briefly before going back into the state again, and Narwhal just puts her straight to sleep using a spell. And Dovahkiin takes her to bed, while most of the others who may have sustained some damage get some rest. And this is where Nisha eventually catches up, and she gets informed of what happens. So, after everyone rests for a bit, they finally, while some of them are resting actually, Nisha and Dovahkiin head out. And while going around, they meet an interesting goblin. Skrunkle. You may recognize this already. But with Skrunkle was this head who had information on Yuna. This disembodied head Skrunkle was carrying around to try to help it out, but the head was named Perseus. It was after he had been helping Yuna for a while before he did something regrettable, and she had called him a traitor before leaving him. So, they take Skrunkle back to the inn so the others can talk to her and get info. And eventually, we are informed about the reasoning that we're not able to leave the city. There is a giant dome around it that's keeping everyone inside, not being able to leave. And we talk about this for a while, until suddenly the inn doors open. A hooded figure walks on through without a care in the world and sits down and orders a drink. Nobody is able to recognize her except for Wesleyan. He freezes in horror and backs up against a wall. He whispers to the others, "Go upstairs. Get out of here. Get everyone and get out. That's my sister, Eupharia. She had found us." So we all quickly run upstairs, get everyone together, and we jump out the fucking windows and escape. Meanwhile, Wesleyan and Skrunkle are still downstairs. The lady still just minding her own business. Wesleyan tries to get Skrunkle's attention, but Skrunkle is doing what Skrunkle does best and reading book about how to speak common. So, Wesleyan throws a coin pretty hard at her head, and she goes, "Ow!" why you hurt Scrungle? And Wesleyan tries to urge her through the door. Eventually, she finally listens, and they both quickly head out together. And as the party makes it out, they see Wesleyan and Scrunkle make it out, and they eventually catch up to her. However, soon afterwards, the hooded figure leaves as well, and starts tailing us. We start going pretty fast, trying to think of whatever we can do. We were told that the place where this barrier around the city is originating is from a church. We needed to make it to the church before Eupharia got to us. Wesleyan at first says that he would stay behind and try to deal with her himself. But Scrunkle intervenes, saying that she'll volunteer as tribute to try to get her off our trail. And she heads off into a nearby alleyway while the others continue on. The masked figure follows in the direction of Scrunkle. Very soon after, Eupharia catches up and grabs Scrunkle by the scruff of their back and asks, "Oh, where are you going, little goblin?"
Scrunkle just walking around town.
"Well, I saw you with some of those others. Would you... And not to mention, you do seem a bit familiar. I can detect some magic coming from you. So, I need you to be honest. Who are you really?"
What are you talking about? I'm Scrunkle. I'm just walking around.
Well, Eupharia is not happy with this response. She gets more aggressive. "Don't play dumb with me. I can detect your magic. Now tell me who you really are." And while doing this, Scrunkle drops her pack, and out comes the head, which Eupharia recognizes. Perseus is terrified. Eupharia? What are you doing here?" "Oh, I'm just looking for your little friend. Not to mention, I thought I dealt with you already. I guess I really do need to make sure I deal with loose ends." And I'm pretty sure she ends up killing Perseus within that moment. And she ends up slashing at Scrunkle. And the disguise forcefully wears off. Scrunkle was Yuna, who now remembers who she was. And Eupharia is like, hello, little Yuna. Great to finally meet you. I've heard so much good things about you from my brother. You are such a lovely little lady that I will grant you this one little thing. because I'm in a really good mood right now. And she leads Yuna out of the alleyway, and there, the rest of the party was still running towards the church. And she tells her, "There's your friends right there. They've been really worried about you. Go. You need to go reunite with them. They'd be worried sick over you." And she forcibly pushes her out of the alleyway before disappearing. Yuna looks back and sees that she's gone. Then Yuna quickly runs to the others, screaming, Guys, it's me!" Meanwhile, the others suddenly hear her voice and they turn. And all of a sudden, Yuna is running towards them. They, by pure chance, reunited. Everyone stopped what they were doing and immediately came running over. The first to reach her were both Aurelia and Dovahkiin. They both hug her very tightly and apologize for everything, and she forgives them, saying that she was too careless and reckless, and that she was sorry about worrying everyone, and that it was okay. She wasn't angry. She's just glad to have us back. We were like her family, and she was just happy we were all back together. Nisha was the next to reach her, and they also shared similar hugs and glee. And then the next to make it was Wesleyan. Yuna stopped what she was doing and immediately ran for Wesleyan, and they embraced very tightly, both sobbing very hard. I thought I lost you. I'm glad you're safe, Wesleyan. But before she could get the words fully out and appreciate the moment, a sword stabbed straight through her gut, and she fell backwards. And as she fell, she saw the same premonition that Minoko had told her. Minoko told Yuna a while ago that her time of death would be under a blood moon. And as Yuna fell, being impaled, as she looked up into the sky, she saw the moon basked in blood red. And the next thing she saw was hundreds, thousands of swords blooding straight through her, after over and over. And the last thing Yuna heard before it all turned to black was a familiar, ear-piercing laugh. And it turned black. Meanwhile, from the party's point of view, the next thing they knew, Yuna fell backwards, sword in her gut. Nisha was the first. She yelled in anger before more swords rained down straight into Yuna. They kept pelting her. And Yuna was still smiling and still with tears in her eyes. The last things that you could see her mutter, almost like a whisper, it's just that I'm sorry, before the life left Yuna's eye. The party raged out, bawled, Wesleyan down on his knees holding her body, crying out. And then the next thing they hear is that blood-curdling laugh. Oh, that was precious! You really thought that you were gonna reunite, and then... that despair is so good. Euphoria stood there, raining down the swords. She killed Yuna in front of everyone. Wesleyan raged out, screaming that he was going to fucking kill you, Euphoria. Nisha couldn't even get out any words except for blood-curdling screams before charging straight towards Euphoria. The battle did not go on for long. At most, maybe 30 to a minute, 30 seconds to a minute. We were outclassed way too much. And she unleashed an ability that weakened everyone. And Dovahkiin was one of the first to say out weakly that we need to go. We need to the church. But before they had time to try to evacuate to it, Euphoria had gotten behind Wesleyan and knocked him out unconscious. After that, she gave us an ultimatum. She would let the rest of us go, free as a bird, to go into the church and try to stop the barrier. And that we needed to hurry because we were on a timer. Or we could continue this little fiasco. Though it doesn't seem like you're getting anywhere. All you would need to do is just run. And leave Yuna and Wesleyan behind. Not left with much options. A lot of the party realized that we needed to seal this barrier before something bad happened. We were on a timer. Who knew what would have happened when that timer went up? However, not everyone backed down. Nisha as well as Aurelia, stayed behind. They couldn't abandon their friend. Dovahkiin nearly joined them, but he thought about it tactically. Yuna is already gone. There's nothing they could do about her. As much as we wanted to. It was too brutal. Too late. He wanted to stay behind for Wesley, but he knew he was too weak. He would just meet the same fate. It was pathetic. He wasn't strong enough. As he ran away, his sorrow turned to anger, determination. Euphoria would pay. He was determined. He needed to get stronger. He needed the training of the blood hunting that his father had. He needed the training from the Nightclaws. He needed more strength. Either she was going to die, or he would die trying to kill her. He had gained new morals, new objective, new determination. Avenge my friends. Be the true leader that I need to be for them. With this newfound determination, they marched forward. Dovahkiin was the first to arrive, busting through all of the doors, eventually finding the priest. First, he asked nicely, would you happen to be the one who set up this barrier up in the sky? The person replies, oh, yes, that was me. I am the priest. Dovahkiin lets out a nice sigh before saying, oh, good. Then that means this anger won't be redirected at someone it's not meant to, before unbrandishing its sword and immediately pointing it towards the priest in the most angered voice he had ever been able to erupt from himself. Turn it off! The priest is like, whoa, what happened to being diplomatic? I mean, we just met. Who would do this in the house of the Lord? Dovahkiin didn't listen. He mimicked the voice of Euphoria in an angry, demanding tone. Turn it off! Before he could do anything else, Glaive stepped forward, pointing Dovahkiin's sword down, looking at him in a way of, don't do this. Dovahkiin calms himself and sheaths his sword again. And Glaive comes up to interrogate him, asks, how do we turn it off? And that's when he says, oh, I'm afraid it's already too late for you guys. And he summons this guardian before heading off and is like, sorry to cut things short, but I need to keep you guys distracted. And he quickly escapes while we are stuck to deal with this titan. This weird guardian thing. Which we managed to kill without it landing a single attack. Turn 1. Arwal manages to levitate it. It is stuck in place. It is not able to attack us. Turn 2. Dovahkiin, now with Tatari's cloak, binds together its hands. It fails throws to get out both bindings for the rest of this battle as we wail the shit out of that guardian. It didn't stand a fucking chance. So yeah, dealt with it without a hitch. And as we went into the final room, where it was, the other priests who were directing the spell look over to us for saying, oh, I'm sorry everyone, but it's too late. And the next thing we know, a giant shockwave erupts from the room. We are all engulfed in it. The entire city is engulfed in it. The city is gone. Like it had left the entire plane. Thus concluding the first act. But before we leave it off, on the other side, with Nisha and Aurelia, they stayed behind, desperately to do anything to hold them off so they could at least keep their friends safe, keep Yuna and Wesley with them. But they couldn't do much. The next thing they knew, Nisha suffered a giant attack through her gut. She fell over, unconscious. Aurelia, desperate to try to make it up to Yuna. Aurelia, who had initially betrayed Yuna's trust, fighting every inch of what she could to make it up for her, to not give in to her fear. She did everything in all of her might, but as she went to cast another spell, Euphoria grabbed her arm and was like, I wanna try something a little fun. She tears off Aurelia's spellcasting hand, her right hand. And Aurelia quickly falls over, unconscious, from the blood loss. And Aurelia just looks at it and just tosses it aside. It's useless. And then she picks up Yuna's dead corpse alongside Wesleyan's body and flies away straight out of the city. And as she is able to get out of the city limits, the shockwave is seen coming out throughout the entire city as it disappears like it never existed. Thus concluding Act 1, The Legacy of Thorne. Or I guess at the current moment, The Legacy of Dovahkiin's harem. Yeah, that's more or less, Act 1 is the this is definitely a much longer video than I was expecting it to be, but the next video will not actually go into Act 2. The next video will be our Halloween one-shot. So it will be non-canon to this stuff. It's gonna be kind of an interlude between Acts 1 and 2. And by the time of recording this clip now, as this video has taken me about 3 days-ish to record, we have actually just had this session yesterday now, and let me just say, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but it is a very fun session, I will say that much. You'll just have to watch that next video right after this one, because these should be going up at the same time. The start of Act 2 should be coming out sometime within this coming week. I'd say maybe at the latest, maybe around the 17th or 18th, maybe. We'll see. But if you guys are actually here until the end, I commend you, because this is a very long fucking video. I was not expecting it to be this long. I am really sorry about that, but there's just a lot of content to cover as we get up into the second act, so you guys at least have some basic idea of what's going on and everything, you know? And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.